Can a Kingdom Rush noob beat Terraria's hardest forgotten event with just Sentries on Master Mode? Probably not. But what's up guys and girls and fellow strategy lovers? As you can see, we are not playing Kingdom Rush.
Come on now, dawg.
But a very similar game / event in Terraria that seems to replicate a mini tower defense game. And our goal today is to beat this event on Master Mode with Sentries only. So briefly, to explain everything, Terraria is a game where you try to survive and take on various bosses until you eventually push out the pool, aka Noob, then defeat him and beat the game. Okay, now it's time for the actual challenge to begin. Yolon's army consists of 3 stages. The first stage lasts till hard mode and it has only 5 waves. The second stage lasts till Golem fight consisting of 7 waves, and the third or final stage, which is also a stage where you face the boss of the event, Betsy, is right after the Golem fight that's also constructed of 7 waves and it lasts throughout the playthrough. As you can see, I'm already cheating by using more Sentries, not canon to the event. But hey, what are these green things? They're Eternian mana. See? Enemies killed in the event drop Eternian mana that can be used to build Sentries that can be bought from Tavern Keeper NPC. He also sells armor that enhances one of the types of turrets in the event. For this challenge we will only need mostly 2 types, the Ballista and the Flame Burst Sentries. Accessories, mounts and pets are allowed, while potions, banners and extra Sentries are allowed just at this part of the video. And now I'm in the testing grounds. The goal is to beat the event with only Tavern Keeper shop items by the end of this video. So my quest began in Master Mode. Even with potions and statues and banners and extra Sentries, I was still struggling. I needed to find a way for me to beat the early waves consistently. And because I only start with 10 E mana or 1 Sentry, I needed to make it count. The Ballista Sentry was the way to go. It fires a high damage bolt that pierces through enemies, and with the right armor set, it can almost solo early game. My extra Sentry of choice was the Staff of Frost Hydra, similar to the Ballista Sentry, but also applies a debuff to the enemies. With the Ballista and the Hydra Sentry, my early game was secured. Now, the middle and the end game were a problem, because from wave 3, we are introduced to Eternian Wyverns, a flying enemy that deals a lot of damage if it gets into contact with the crystal or the player. The Ballista shoots way too slow to keep up with the Wyverns, so naturally, this is where the Flame Burst Sentry comes into play. The Flame Burst Sentry shoots a bit faster than the Ballista, and its projectile has a bigger hitbox, allowing it to hit flying enemies more often. Even if the Sentry misses a couple of times, usually the on-fire debuff takes care of the enemy. But not all Wyverns are taken care of. What about this one? The final boss of this event had paid us a visit, but before we fight Betsy, we need to go back to the starting line where the first stage of the event begins. So the first stage is particularly hard because you can notice that the Tavern Keeper at this point in the game doesn't sell armor, so we can only use accessories to boost our defense. Then, without further ado, I bought all the necessary things to start the event. At first, I tried to use the Ballista Flameburst strategy, but failed as I could not deal with the Wyverns. Normally, the combination would work, but these Sentries were different because these were tier 1 Sentries, and I had no armor to boost their performance, so I resorted to mounts and accessories available to me at that point of the game, but still, it wasn't enough. And like I said, Ballista and Flameburst were mostly dominating. Mostly. The Explosive Diarrhea Sentry, the Explosive Trap Sentry joins the battle. It was obvious that the damage wasn't there with my previous setup, so I had to come up with some different strategy. And if American and Russian soldiers could agree on one thing, it would be that the landmines are fucking effective. The mines got rid of the initial problem, which was that the Wyverns distracting the Ballista Sentries for long enough for the ground enemies to clump up and storm the crystal. By placing 3 mines on one side, it completely deleted the ground enemies, which allowed me to focus mostly on one side. But the fun wasn't over yet, because as the final wave was nearing to a close, a mysterious purple mist began to spread from the port. It was the wrath of the Dark Mage. Dark Mage is the first boss of the event, and if you let him live for too long, you will regret it, because he shoots a high damage piercing magic ball, spawns skeletons, and even heals himself and his allies. It was difficult to take him out with all the enemies getting in the way, but at last the Dark Mage descends into darkness. Finally, it is time for stage 2. This meant that now the Tavern Keeper sells armor and stronger Sentries. But not only that, At this point of the game, I had access to more accessories to further enhance my existing DPS. The Old One's army now has 7 waves instead of 5, and we needed every bit of advantage that we can get. That basically means that we absolutely have to grind for certain items and mounts. But fuck that, with the magic of Terrasar, I got all the necessary equipment to start the event. Early game was fairly easy with our new and improved Sentries. Even though the enemy is scaled with the player, we are one step ahead of them because I reforged every item and got a significant damage increase. Again, the main problem were the better, stronger Wyverns, but nonetheless, with some careful micro, we were able to keep them at bay. And as the wave 7 was slowly beginning to end, a great battle cry was heard from the edges of the portal, when suddenly a large humanoid figure stepped out with its giant head opening what it seemed like a mouth containing 2 fangs reaching the height of its one large menacing eye. It was the Ogre, the final boss of the second stage. The Ogre is fast and strong. There is no way of distracting it from its target except killing it, which was very hard to do since it throws a ball of spit, greatly reducing one's mobility, while one swing of its bat can reduce the player's HP to 0. Although the Ogre is tough, he was no match for the new ballista sentries that were further buffed by the Squire's armor that I was wearing. Now, it was only a matter of time before the mighty Ogre falls. The servants have fallen, and finally, it is time for Betsy to face its demise. And to make myself worthy of victory, like in the previous 2 stages, I didn't use any potions, banners, or extra sentries. In this third and final stage, the Tavern Keeper sells his most powerful sentries and armor. The first wave has officially started, because now I had only 1 sentries to start with. The play was to stall out one of the sides so that the sentry can do enough damage. And that wasn't too big of a problem, because now I had the Valhalla armor set on me, which granted various buffs to the ballista, and on top of that, each time I take damage, the ballista sentries shoot faster. The Wyverns were now taken care of, and really every other small enemy up until wave 4, when an unexpected guest decided to show up. It was the Dark Mage again, and he had double the HP of when we previously encountered him. And even though my sentries were holding the line, the Dark Mage still managed to damage my crystal and cause trouble. To make matters worse, he was not alone, because on wave 5, the Ogre comes back again with triple the amount of HP and tries to take down the crystal. The Ogre was even tougher to kill, with all the Wyverns distracting the sentries, but again falls short to the power of the good old wooden bolts. So the wave 6 came in, and the Old One's army threw everything in its arsenal and combined the magic with the sheer might to form the last front against the crystal. Little did they know that I had literally 20 sentries and that it wasn't even a challenge. And at last, the Old One decided to show up on the 7th and the final wave in an attempt to get the job done. Usually, Betsy attacks the crystal immediately, but if I stay in its way for long enough, I could distract him from targeting the crystal. And that's exactly what I did, as the sentries were trying to deal damage. Unfortunately, distracting a boss is fairly hard since it can kill you pretty quick. Nonetheless, the battle continued, and I died too many times, but at least the sentries managed to secure a W. Thank y'all for watching, and I promise to see you soon.